expecting this brilliant level of directness from a beautiful 26-year-old redhead, and it charmed me almost instantly. "Do you want to go for a drink?" I asked before I went to bed that night, assuming she lived in London. "I was in London last week," she typed. "Now I'm back home." I absolutely cannot tell you what inspired me to book a flight to Iceland 3 weeks later, but I can tell you that it was out of character. Maybe it was because I was dating a few people in London, that flying for 2.5 hours to meet a pure stranger didn't have the air of desperation that it might otherwise have had. Besides, we'd FaceTime to make sure she wasn't a catfish. "This is how all good Nordic crime dramas start," my flatmate said as I packed my bag. "She's going to murder you with an ice pick." Other friends thought it was romantic. "Maybe you'll fall in love and start behaving like an adult." I was unprepared for both eventualities, so I pretended I was writing a travel article and blagged a free hotel room as a backup in case something went drastically wrong. Only, I never checked into the hotel room. When we first met, in a sun-drenched bus station car park, not unlike the one at Luton Airport, she walked right up to me and kissed me. For the next few hours, our bodies were in constant contact, making out, lying in one another's laps, holding hands. It felt like the first time you fall in love, when you're naive and fearless because you don't know what a broken heart can do to you yet. It was like every bad rom-com, except this time, both of the protagonists were girls. Conversation with Salka wasn't all that different from talking on the phone, only now the words fell out faster. We told the usual pretentious stories that you tell when you're trying to impress someone new. How she'd once moved to South America alone, how I cried after I interviewed my heroes. But neither of us really listened to the other showing off, because we were too distracted by the mounting question of when we were going to sleep together. It happened early evening. Immediately after, lying in bed together, she asked me if I wanted to go and have dinner at her parents' house. I felt relieved, almost, as though, if she hadn't done something so psycho that first day, it would have all felt like a giant prank, like I'd landed someone too normal for me. I think it was the relief that compelled me to agree, coupled with the fact that I wanted to see more of her life, and I only had 2 days in which to do so. We drove out west to her family's weatherboard house in the middle of nowhere, and when we got there, she showed me around. In their lounge, a huge reindeer head was mounted on the wall. Salka explained that her dad had shot and killed it, and I suddenly got a strange feeling in my stomach. It seemed to be telling me that, if anything went wrong, my head would end up next to that reindeer's. And yet, at the same time, I felt like I wanted to stay there forever. It was all very exciting. Over the next 6 months, the excitement between Salka and me turned out to be very expensive. We would fly back and forth to visit one another, and if we couldn't be together physically, we would talk constantly in between. This wasn't my first relationship. I'd had several, but this time things were different. I'd never been so sure about someone so quickly, and a wedding, kids, and old age played out in my mind like a tightly edited trailer for a film. Before we'd met, looking into a child's eyes had still felt like staring down the barrel of a gun. But over the course of 6 months, Salka slowly began to desensitize me to the idea of having children by talking about them constantly. When I was hanging out with her, it felt as though everywhere we went together, the supermarket, the public baths, as popular in Iceland as, say, pubs are in England, or restaurants, we ran into friends of Salka's who had babies, and faster than I would have expected, their lives became the blueprint for our own. When we realized a long-distance relationship was no longer sustainable, we agreed that I should move to Iceland, and I found that I was willing to give up my job, flat, and friends in London to pursue a semblance of what forever looks like. Moving in together, pooling our funds, arguing over baby names. So I put the wheels in motion, quitting my job and giving notice on my flat. But I never mentioned that I was sacrificing anything, because for Salka it meant too much responsibility. "Tell me you're not doing this all for me," she'd say dramatically. And so I just pretended I'd woken up one day as a child and realised it was my dream to live in Iceland. Back in London, I didn't know any children, but I had definitely not been acting like a grown-up. Going out constantly, exhibiting a general disregard for financial planning, failing at monogamy with most of the people I had been dating. My friends, even those in long-term relationships or in their 30s, didn't seem interested in kids. Many were gay men who had casual sex and casual relationships by choice, and would stare at me blankly if I asked them whether they considered the idea of starting a family, some because they had been brutally rejected by their own. In my immediate